My name is Tiffany Q, and welcome to my ABRSM Grade 5 Theory Lessons series, where I record snippets of my live lessons with my students. Please note that this is not a substitute for a textbook. If you're preparing for the theory exam, I would still recommend having a teacher to guide you through both the coursework and exam paper preparation. Suitable chords for melodies. This comes up as the first question in question 5 of the exam. The first thing you will need to do is to figure out the key signature of the melody you are given. This is the only question where you need to find out the key yourself. Look at any accidentals, raised sevenths, to tell you whether or not it is a major or a minor key. Look at also for chordal and scalic shapes that will correspond to a key. Then draw a chord plan according to the key. Study the bracketed bars and figure out which notes belong to a chord from your chord plan. The last two chords of a phrase must create a cadence. Read the exam question carefully to confirm how many cadences there will be. So this here is the question that we will look at. So step 1, find the key. So if I just zoom in there, we can take a closer look. So the key signature, there's no sharps or flats, so it's either C major or A minor. A minor has a raised seventh of G sharp, so I don't see any G sharps on first glance. The piece begins with a C, and then it has a G there, and those two belong to the chord 1 of C major. It also ends with the C as well. C to E is also the chord 1, C and E. So everything's sort of pointing to C major there, and if I play this, you will realize it actually does sound major because there's a lack of the raised seventh. That definitely sounds like a major key. So that's step 1 completed. Step 2, draw out a chord plan, which I've done here. Clef. Always write a clef, just in case it just confuses you. I always find that a clef really grounds you in the actual pitches, so you're not reading it in the wrong one. Then key signature, if needed. The first note, second note, fourth and fifth, and then stack the chords on top and label them clearly for yourself. If you want to go the extra step, you can also write out the note names, but I think you should be quite confident with reading the notes by this stage. So that's our second. Okay, then step 3, fill in the chords. So this here is a little bit tricky because it's not like the cadence question. The cadence question, you need to match every single note. For the melody question, you just need to match the best or the most suitable chord for each one. So looking here, looking at all these notes, they have a bracket, okay, around this bar, and we have notes D, E, F, and A. So we have 4 different pitches, but we know that in our chords, each chord only has 3 pitches. So we need to match which chord suits the best. And in chord 2, we actually have D, F, and A here. D, F, and A. So that one definitely matches more than any of the other chords. Then we have B and G in this one. So there's only one chord which has both B and G in it, and that's chord number 5. And then we just need to double check that there is a cadence at the end, because it says indicate suitable chords in the 2 cadences. We'll get to that in a second as well. Okay, so 2 to 5, that is the imperfect cadence, so that definitely is correct. Then we move down here, we have A, C, and F, that is all chord 4. Then we have D, G, and B, so that's all chord 5, very obviously. And then this one here is C and E, C and E. So that is chord 1. This question, I have to say, is quite a nice question because it doesn't leave you sort of considering all your options. Now let's imagine for a moment that there was a C, minim. Okay, so let's pretend that instead of having a C and an E, it was just one note at the end, C. Now, if there's only one note, we can probably say that it could either be chord number 1 or chord number 4, right? If there's only one note, it could be either. But there's one big reason that it's not going to be chord 4, and that's because if it were to be chord 4, chords 5 going to 4 is not a cadence. So when you're in doubt, when you have two options that could fit one box, and that will well happen in the future, or you might have lots of different notes in one and you're stuck for options, the cadence will be your best friend. That will show you which chord it should be, because it needs to be functional. So there needs to be a cadence at the end of the phrases. One between this chord, and then one between this one and this one. On a side note, this skill is very important to have, I think especially for pianists, because in the future you might have a friend who's maybe singing or playing a different instrument like the violin or just a melody instrument or one line, and let's say there's no accompaniment, so you need to sort of make up or improvise some accompaniment. If you have a good knowledge of chords, you can probably just read the melody and sort of make up chords. And I'm going to play for you what it sounds like, this melody, with the harmonized chords here. And then for fun, I'm going to choose completely wrong chords and then show you what that sounds like and why that is not correct. So this is the right version first. So that sounds pretty good and harmonized. So let's stick in wrong chords for fun. So I'm going to start off with maybe a chord 4 here, and I'm going to put a chord 1 here. I'm going to put chord 2, chord 1, and chord 2. So let's hear what that sounds like when you have completely incorrect chords. Sounds really bad. Alright, that sounds absolutely terrible. So, moral of the story, make sure that your chords are correct so that the melody sounds well harmonized. All of the chords in my chord plan are said to be in root position. The reason why they are in root position is because they are in their basic form, and the very lowest note of the chord is the actual note of the chord itself. So what I mean is chord 1 has the tonic of the note as the bottom, chord 2 has the supertonic note as the bottom of the chord, and so on. What happens when we rearrange these notes in the music? Now, of course, in music we won't always get the chords in their root form, and that's where the inversions come in. Say we have chord 1 in root position. So I'm going to write out a chord like this. All of these notes are part of chord number 1 in F major. So we have the F here, A, F, C again. So they all belong in chord 1. So when we are looking at the chords in music, especially for this question, the first step is the same as the step for cadences. We check these notes and then we see what chord it is. So it is chord 1. And then the next thing we do is we check the lowest note in the music. Now in this case, the lowest note here is an F, which is also the lowest note in my chord plan for chord 1. So that would actually be a chord 1A, or just root position. Now let's say we had chord 1, but the bottom note wasn't an F. If it was an A, and again I'm distributing the other notes in no particular order, so you can see that these notes all still form chord 1. Now since the A is now the lowest note, or the bass note in the music, I now call that a B. If the lowest note in the music was a C, which is the third note or the highest note of our root chord, then it would be a chord 1C. So inversions all depend on the lowest note of the music. What does the lowest note tell us? If the lowest note is also the lowest note in our chord plan, then it would be a A chord or a root position chord. If the lowest note of the music was the middle or the second note of our chord plan, then it would be a B chord or first inversion. And if the lowest note in the music is our highest note or our third note in the chord plan, then it is a C chord or what we call second inversion. We're still in F major now. So step 1 would be to name the chords. That's a D, B flat, F, B flat. Okay, and then we check our chord plan to see which chord that is. The only chord that matches the notes perfectly is chord 4, B flat, D, and F. So therefore, we know that there's a chord 4. The second step is to check the bottom note here. That note is a D. Let's check our root chord or our chord plan. We've got B flat, D, F. Since D is the second note of the chord plan, that would be a 4B chord.